Throughout world history, countless wars have been fought around the globe over issues ranging from religious differences, territorial disputes, politics, and ethnicity. This work examines the deadliest wars in human history. It provides an analysis of each conflict's origins, overall death toll, and casualties in regard to both the military and civilian sectors. So here is the top 10 deadliest wars in human history. Number 10. 30 Years' War. Catholics versus Protestants. Death toll, 8 million. The 30 Years' War was a conflict fought in Central Europe between 1618 and 1648 among the European powers of the day. Although the war originally began as a conflict between Protestant and Catholic states from the disintegrating Holy Roman Empire, it quickly spread in the years that followed to reach much of the European continent, deploying large armies, including a large contingency of mercenary fighters. Countless individuals perished in the years that followed, making the 30 Years' War one of the bloodiest conflicts in human history. Although particular regions of Europe suffered more than others, it is estimated that nearly 8 million individuals were killed as a result of the 30 Years' War, with countless others wounded. Due to the immense destruction caused by the conflict, disease that reached epidemic levels also played a tremendous role in the number of individuals that died, both civilians and soldiers alike. Number 9. The Russian Civil War. Death toll, 9 million people. The Russian Civil War was a multi-party war fought between 1917 and 1926, which involved both the Communist Red Army and the Nationalist White Army forces. Following the collapse of the Russian Empire and the dissolution of the Tsar's family power, Bolshevik forces led by Vladimir Lenin engaged nationalist troops for control of the Russian interior, with disastrous consequences in terms of lives lost and property destroyed. Total death figures for the Russian Civil War are difficult to measure. It is currently accepted by historians that the conflict claimed approximately 9 million lives, with several millions more seriously wounded by the war. Although not counted in the official death toll, millions more are known to have perished from circumstances caused by the war, such as famine, epidemics, and starvation. Number 8. Chinese Civil War. Death toll, 15.5 million people. The Chinese Civil War was a conflict fought in China during the mid-20th century between communist forces and the Republic of China. Occurring in two separate phases, the first phase of the Chinese Civil War occurred between 1927 and 1936, with the second phase occurring around 1946 and 1950. The conflict erupted following the collapse of the Qing dynasty, as government and communist forces attempted to seize power during the power vacuum that followed, with devastating results. In total, it is estimated that nearly 8 million people, both military personnel and civilians, died as a result of the Chinese Civil War. In terms of dead and wounded, the overall numbers increased quickly, with an estimated 15.5 million casualties in total. Despite these extraordinary losses, the introduction of communism into China only extended the suffering of the Chinese people. Number 7. The First World War. Death toll, 18 million in total. The First World War, also known as the Great War, was a worldwide conflict that originated in Europe in 1914. The war resulted in the mobilization of approximately 70 million military personnel, as the European continent was engulfed by conflict in nearly every corner of the map. When the fighting finally ceased in November 1918, Europe faced devastation on a scale never seen before in history, as the continent experienced widespread political, economic, and cultural changes in the conflict's wake. In total, approximately 9 million military personnel lost their lives during the Great War, with an additional 9 to 10 million civilians killed. Scholars attribute these tremendous death tolls to advances in technology, most notably the arrival of the machine gun, chemical weapons, and the advent of airplanes. Number 6. The Dungan Revolt. Death toll, 20 million people. The Dungan Revolt refers to a religious conflict fought in Western China between 1862 to 1877. The war began when Muslim rebels began rioting in China in response to religious and racial discrimination that was being perpetuated by the Qing dynasty. In response to the riots, the Qing government responded with astonishing speed, unleashing devastating massacres against the rebels across western China. Although the Muslim rebels fought heroically for several years, their lack of coordination, leadership, and organization ultimately led to their downfall, as they found it difficult to lead coordinated attacks on the Qing army. Estimates place overall deaths around 10 million, with millions of other civilians, rebels, and soldiers wounded by the conflict. These numbers may be far higher though, as various reprisals against the rebels were carried out by the Qing dynasty in the years that followed. As a result, overall death figures could potentially be as high as 20 million. Number 5. The Taiping Rebellion. Death toll: 20 to 25 million people. The Taiping Civil War took place in China between 1850 and 1864 between the Qing government and the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. The Taiping forces waged a nationalist, political, and religious war against the Qing dynasty with the goal of converting the Chinese people to Christianity and toppling the Qing government in the process. Estimated deaths from the Taiping Rebellion are difficult to measure due to the lack of official records from this time period. However, most estimates place the number of deaths at approximately 20 to 25 million, with thousands of others wounded. To this day, the Taiping Rebellion is considered one of the deadliest civil wars in human history, as well as the largest conflict of the 19th century. Number 4. The Qingming Dynasty War. Death toll: more than 25 million. The Qing conquest of the Ming Dynasty, also known as the Ming-Qing transition, refers to a decade war between the Qing and Ming dynasty that lasted from 1618 to 1683, originating from a series of complaints known as the Seven Grievances, which enumerated the major social and political issues facing China at this time. As with most conflicts from this time period, overall fatalities are difficult to ascertain. However, it is currently estimated that more than 25 million people died as a result of the war. To this day, the Qing defeat of the Ming dynasty is considered one of the deadliest conflicts in human history, and certainly the largest of the 17th century. Number 3. Second Sino-Japanese War. Death toll: 29 million people. The Second Sino-Japanese War refers to a conflict between the Republic of China and the Empire of Japan. Lasting from 1937 to 1945, the war is widely considered one of the bloodiest conflicts in human history, as Japanese forces killed countless Chinese civilians and military personnel in their quest for victory. The conflict began as a result of the Japanese Empire seeking to expand its control into the heart of Asia, where resources, labor, and food were plentiful for their growing empire. Although figures vary significantly, it is generally accepted that nearly 29 million people died as a result of the Second Sino-Japanese War. Of these fatalities, it is believed that approximately 20 to 25 million were civilians, with an estimated 4 to 5 million military personnel killed on both Chinese and Japanese sides. Number 2. The Inlushan Rebellion. Death toll: 36 million deaths. The Inlushan Rebellion refers to a massive war that occurred in China in 755 AD. Lasting nearly 8 years, the rebellion was a direct result of General Inlushan declaring himself emperor of northern China in defiance of the established Tang dynasty. Fearing that their reign was close to an end, the Tang dynasty hired nearly 4,000 mercenaries to accompany their army in the battles that followed. Spanning the reign of 3 separate emperors, the war resulted in tremendous social, economic, and political upheaval within China, before the rebellion was finally crushed in 763 AD. Overall death tolls for the Inlushan Rebellion are difficult to measure. Destruction of crops and various food sources alone resulted in mass starvation and disease throughout the civilian sectors of China as the war reached its apex. Comparisons from before and after the rebellion indicate a dramatic population drop for much of China. In total, scholars have placed overall deaths for both military and civilians at a mind-blowing 36 million people. Number 1. The Second World War. Death toll: 70 million deaths. The Second World War refers to a massive global conflict that lasted from 1939 to 1945, and which involved nearly all of the world's countries. Divided into two separate camps, the Axis versus the Allies, the two military forces engaged in total war for nearly 6 years with devastating consequences in terms of both death and destruction. It is estimated that 70 million people died as a result from this war, among which 20 million people were military personnel and 40 to 50 million were civilians. The Soviet Union alone accounts for nearly 27 million of these deaths, as the war devastated large areas of Eastern Europe during the war. The majority of deaths were caused by disease, starvation, bombings, and massacres of the civilian population. World War II is considered the bloodiest and costliest war in human history, as the conflict devastated the European, Asian, and African continents for decades to come. In the end, the last 10 wars combined are nothing compared to the upcoming World War III, where much more sophisticated and deadly weapons might be deployed, especially nuclear weapons, during a nightmare scenario of an all-out war between the United States and Russia. These rockets can travel great distances between 10,000 and 16,000 kilometers. The total number of nuclear warheads is more than 13,000 worldwide. The upcoming conflict will be devastating, and the estimated deaths after the attacks from the blast and the heat generated is more than 500 million. Also, the usage of nuclear power will have catastrophic consequences on the planet as whole, causing the drop of global temperatures to extreme levels that will impact the food supplies, as the global average calorie production from crops would decline by 90% just 3 to 4 years after the nuclear war, causing the death of more than 5 billion people worldwide.